My name is Silas. I'm Chinese, but my Chinese is very poor, so I'm going to be using English. Hopefully the translation is something that the audience can understand. I would like to invite my respected panelists to come up. Is it? Matthew and Agnes, Michael. I started as an architect at SOM back in the 90s. I'm sorry, late 80s, 87. And I became very fascinated in facade design because that was what I was relegated to do. So for 5 years, my drawing board, one of them was 8 feet long. They made it especially for me because I drew facades sideways. In any case, by 90s, things has changed. I was sent over to China and began to work on projects. What's remarkably different from those days is that, like Jimao Tower, for example, almost 85 to 90% of the product is made overseas and imported. But if you look at today, 2026, it has changed totally. I was asking Agnes the other day, how much Chinese product for building facade is made locally or made in China? She told me it's somewhere close to 50 or more in Dubai. So this is where we are today. We also heard this morning Matthew talk about how technology may be changing the future of design and maybe the future of making buildings. So the topic that I would like to focus on next is really about how we could share and collaborate in the future in terms of manufacture, working overseas, and these panelists have much experience doing overseas projects, and I hope to find ways to engage a discussion that will be helpful for this audience. So facades today are being asked to do more than ever before. They must perform environmentally, meet rising sustainability demands, express identity, satisfy regulations, and still be delivered quickly and economically. Yet across regions, the way we balance these expectations differs dramatically. Some markets prioritize speed, others prioritize certainty, some focus on cost, others on life cycles value. At the same time, global supply chains are reshaping how facades are designed and delivered, particularly as manufacturers expand into new markets such as Middle East. So perhaps the real question is no longer what a facade should do, but how decisions are made about what matters the most. Today's discussion brings together facade engineers to explore where ambitions meets reality and where global opportunity meets local expectations. I have set up this panel with 5 different sections. The first section is on global mindsets, speed versus value. China has experienced in the last 25 years much speed, but today I think the market out there is looking not speed, but for value. I would like to start with my question first to Michael. In this fast-moving markets, how does delivery speed affect facade performance and reliability?
Yeah, I think that's a very relevant question. We're always looking for ways to sort of balance out the demands of the project in terms of schedule. But at the same time, there's a lot of discussion about sustainability. But I look at sustainability in a kind of slightly different way, in which how do you build buildings that won't get torn down in 20 years, 50 years? I think looking at some of the old constructions, whether it's in Far East or more prevalent in Europe, you have these buildings which last hundreds of years. And the modern day construction is really leaning and have been leaning towards series of sheet goods, thin construction, lightweight construction. And we find that these things are not great over time. And so I think the mindset really needs to adopt to materials that can last for a long time, that can build on a kind of culture of architecture and construction and methodologies, and maybe do a little bit of a pushback on this constant push for speed.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to move to the next question for Matthew. When timeline shrinks, what is most likely to be compromised for facades particularly?
Well, you know, there is a very famous proposition in construction that between time, quality, and cost, you can only choose 2 out of 3. You can never have all 3 at the same time. So if you really need to go very quickly, time is one of the propositions. You're going to sacrifice either cost, it's going to be more expensive to do it in that time, or more commonly, you're going to sacrifice quality, you know. And this is what we see time and time again. I happen to have had that discussion with 2 developers, 2 different companies, just a couple of weeks back, where they had problems on their existing building. They were finished not even long ago, maybe 5 years, 7 years ago, and they had facade panels, curtain wall panels dropping from the buildings, smashing things around, you know, hitting other buildings nearby. And there was no specific triggering event. You know, it wasn't an earthquake, it wasn't a typhoon or something like that. It was just an ordinary Sunday morning, for example, right? And the panels flew off. And I said, how does this happen? You know, we have quality controls, we have supervision, we have engineers certifying the designs. But the reality of it is that when you want to go really, really fast, something is going to give. And since they don't want to pay more, you know, they are answerable to their shareholders, they need to achieve a certain profitability and bottom line, quality is going to be sacrificed, and unfortunately that often results in accidents and potentially deaths or injuries. So I think maybe it's a case of rethinking what are the priorities, right? Is it time, cost, or quality, and which of the 2 we should stick with?
Yes, this is a perpetual problem that we all have to deal with as collaborators. Moving on, my third question, I'd like to ask Agnes this question. Are clients prioritizing upfront costs or long-term performance?
That's an interesting question, because some of them are prioritizing costs and some of them quality, and it depends on the type of the client. If the client is building for themselves, or if it's a client who will operate a building, or if you see that they have a good track record of employees who stay very long with the client, they will prioritize quality because they are looking for reputation and they cannot get good reputation from bad quality. There are clients who are looking at fast programs, quickly finishing the project, quickly selling the project, and starting new projects and other new projects, and you see every 6 months a new client representative. They are unfortunately not prioritizing quality. They are prioritizing cost and therefore compromising everything else. But it's a very dangerous thing to be a partner in these type of projects as a consultant or as a contractor or as anyone, because you will not get good reputation out of those projects.
Thank you. Lizette, I leave the question of sustainability, related to sustainability to you. Where is life cycle value most often misunderstood?
Life cycle value, Silas?
Yes, where is life cycle value most often misunderstood?
Where is life cycle value is most misunderstood? So I think what we've seen, so I have not had the chance to present like my esteemed colleagues here, and I'll be doing mine this afternoon, so that people here understand a bit of my background while answering this one. I'm a facade consultant by training, civil engineer background. And for the last 3 years, my co-founder and I have owned a company in Hong Kong called IXO, and we explore this tension upstream, Silas. So a lot of the people we're now speaking to sit in the investor community, they sit in the owner-occupier community, they sit in this space of finance, which is very different to ours. It's very different to what we know from day-to-day project risk. So the understanding of life cycle is completely unknown in this sector, in the investment sector. They have a very strict set of valuation guidelines to assess buildings, things that we generally don't have exposure to in our day-to-day work as engineers, as facade delivery kind of professionals. The biggest misunderstanding with facades that we see is that they will last a lifetime. Because when they look at projects in Europe that have been around for 150, 100, 150 years, they think that the building they are buying today is going to be the same as those. And this is the biggest problem that we see. It's this kind of idea that they are tangibly will last forever, right? And they won't. So they do not set aside budgets to go and explore the problems with those facades, how they can be upgraded, adapted, and this is one of the biggest challenges we would see going forward.
Thank you. I'd like to move out. I'll talk to the next section. We have talked about priorities. Now let's shift to what happens when those priorities meet the reality of design and construction. So my second section is delivery, the reality, design versus build. I would like to actually begin with you, Lizette. Where do
Silas?
Huh?
Again?
Yes. Where do engineers expect, because your background working for an engineering firm, where do engineering expectation clash most with fabrication or installation realities?
Right.
Sorry, do you want me to repeat that?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Where do engineering expectations clash most with fabrication or installation realities?
Hiya. Okay. So my exposure on projects has been Australia, a little bit of the US, tiny bit of Europe, mostly the Middle East. One of the biggest things that we find is things that are being done in the factory and not what's on the drawings, or things that are being done on site and not what are on the drawings. This is particularly true, I'd say, in Hong Kong. The number of sites I've been to where the shop drawings are binned, right? You send the shop drawings, you review the shop drawings, you show up to site, and suddenly there are no shop drawings. So the guys on site will have a flame torch and a welding gun, and they'll be cutting panels or doing things completely differently. So one of the biggest challenges we see actually is the communication breakdown. And how do you overcome that when you have different tensions, the quality control requirements, this kind of thing. I'd say beyond that, Silas, beyond the pure manufacturing, there's also a communication upstream channel, because projects are becoming kind of tighter, the project programs are becoming shorter. We are also seeing a lack of communication in coordination between design professionals. And that flows through obviously into the pointy end, which is construction. And that is a very big problem when you have a facade contractor that's brought on to then have to coordinate all of the problems that have existed in that design coordination space. Very challenging.
Well, that was well done. I reserve my second question to you, Michael, because I think this is maybe relevant to the kind of work that you did for when you first saw Zaha's design for the Morpheus. Is it Morpheus? What is one design idea that looks impressive but is difficult to execute it well?
Sometimes it's not really the visually complex projects. It's really the simpler projects that allows you to pay attention to not form and shape, but rather the details or the flaws. So modern architecture, someone said, was a war on joints. And so we do spend a lot of time looking at joints as an implication to a visual noise that you wouldn't want when the intent is really experience the material itself, and joints are simply a reality that we have to live with. And so a lot of the earlier projects that I've worked on, such as Sana's Toledo Museum of Art in the US, had these kinds of implications where we did have to pay attention to every single aspect of building material tolerances and installation tolerances. But I did also wanted to kind of follow up on the question that you asked, Lizette, about the differences between realities on site in the factories versus what we imagine. And I think the first step for us is to really be empathetic to the site conditions and the people and the conditions that people have to actually work in. It's certainly very distant from your paper and your model, because you're not really taking into account the rebar that you didn't account for, or the weather that you didn't account for, the cold weather that they have to work into. So I do think that mixing in that empathy with the ability to be flexible and to come up with an idea that is new to adapt to the site condition is also kind of an important aspect to bring a little bit more continuity between what's being imagined and what's being constructed. I find that having a lot of this idea of us wearing the consultant hat, sometimes I feel like there's too many of us sitting around the table, and not enough core people that have a real interest in getting the right thing built. And so I really kind of reject the idea as my role to be a policeman. It's like if there's a problem, you go there and you really find out what is the core of the problem, instead of standing on my podium and saying this is the way it must be.
Solutions solve,
Yeah.
problem solver. My next question, Agnes, I toured buildings with you and I can see that you are very interested in the detail and how things are made. So how early should manufacturers and contractors get involved in the project?
Actually, they shouldn't. It depends on the project, yeah? If the project has a specialist team who have good technical experience, then basically we don't need a specialist contractor or a supplier, especially not a supplier, because suppliers have a set product range and they try to squeeze the project into their product range rather than finding a product out of the whole world which is the most optimal for the project. Yeah, so independent consultancy is exactly about knowing different products, knowing new technologies, watching these processes, visiting these manufacturers and suppliers, learn about their offerings, know the capability of the contractors in the region, or work with partners if it's a new region to learn about the capability of contractors and advise accordingly. And then yes, we would reach out to, especially if it's a specialist project which pushes the limits of standard engineering. We would reach out to certain suppliers and contractors to ask, but then a good facade consultancy package results in a tender package which is buildable. It gives a very clear one feasible way to build a project. There may be other ways, but defines a very clear way and gives a basis for pricing. And that's where contractors should come in, because then they can see a solution and they may offer different solution from their background, but they have a baseline to compare that with. So in our business, they should come when we are ready. Yes, you shouldn't. Your mom doesn't like you to go to the kitchen when the dinner is not yet cooked. Yes. Yes. So we like them to come when the dinner is on the table. Yes, and then discuss it further and start the bidding process on the project. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Matthew, you're based in Singapore, but you're doing work all over the world. You have quite a bit, some of the major projects in Middle East. When you working globally, where do misunderstanding happens most? In the material, the tolerance, performance, or installation? I'm particularly interested from your perspective in doing work in the Middle East on this regard.
I would answer in short, probably all of the above. But more specifically, I would say that when you work in different countries, you have to be cognizant of the local capabilities first. What can and cannot be done locally within the project budget, within the project timeline and things like that. Of course, you can bring all the materials, the contractors, everyone from overseas to deliver the project, but that would not be necessarily practical or make sense economically. So we see this very often when we have contractors coming from overseas to work on projects in a different country. They don't understand, they're not clear on the realities of the ground, of what's happening in the country, of how to deliver a project in the country. Michael was talking about winter, for example. They may not have had experience working in winter, or, for example, in the brutal summers of the Middle East, and what happens during those 2-3 months where it's 50 degrees in the middle of the day, the work has to stop, or you may have to start very early in the morning. You have to understand that. Or, for example, in Singapore, it's the monsoon. We have 2 months where it rains non-stop. Or in India, Bangkok, many places where you have to face those realities. or it could be even as basic as unions and how workers behave or what are their rights locally. The other aspect is probably regulations and things like how do you address permitting, getting the permits to work, and physically getting the work done locally. So this is more on the contractors' ability to deliver a project overseas. For consultants, it's more again about knowing what they can or cannot do locally, what are the applicable regulations, applicable standards. We often have to lean very heavily on the local architect or the local engineers to facilitate this aspect. So it's all about collaboration and working closely with a local partner who can fill in the blanks where we may not be so familiar with these kind of local constraints. And finding this local partner, whether you're a consultant designing a project there, or you're a contractor delivering a project there, or a supplier supplying your materials there, this is really the key, really, to a successful outcome.
Thank you. This brings us naturally to the question of global supply and the opportunity, especially as more manufacturers enter the international market, particularly from China. The third section that I have is about market expansion, China, maybe to Middle East particularly. First, I'd like to ask Agnes the question about trust. Chinese manufacturers have strong production capability, but what builds trust internationally?
It's a good question, again. I think it's something that has to be worked on. China, unfortunately, established a reputation of being cheap. And that's something which is difficult to get rid of, because people expect things to be cheap. But they also expect things to be high quality, and they know that China is capable to deliver high quality. But they don't want to realize that high quality does not come on the cheapest cost. So, I think the trust problem comes from this contradiction. When the supplier or the contractor is forced into a very low cost contract, maybe assuming that an okay quality will pass for this price, but then the details of the contract demand a quite high performing, high quality product, and either he needs to deliver that or he will lose future market and reputation again. So I think that's something to work on.
The next question I'm going to ask you is still about the trust. What matters more in Middle East, price, quality, or reliability?
I think I responded that with the very first response, right. Because it really depends on clients. But I think if every contract has two parties, minimum two parties, so it's also on the second party. So one thing is what the client is looking for. One thing is what you can offer, and don't take on projects that is not matching your aims. If your product is high quality, then you have to find those clients who are looking for that, not just saying that, but looking for that. And that's one thing in the Middle East, that every project is marketed as luxury, and every meeting, contract negotiation meeting, starts about, we don't have enough budget. Yeah. Obviously, the two cannot happen in the same time, but still, every project is luxury, but they don't have enough budget. Yeah,
That's same here in China.
it could
was.
could be, because it's a negotiation technique. Yeah, so obviously they have some budget, and obviously the project is not intended to be lifestyle-defining, iconic, whatever new building. But they are aiming for a good quality level, and just try to read behind lines. Every country have different business practices, and expectations are different. In Europe, if you are giving 30% discount, they think that you are not serious. In Middle East, they expect 30% discount. Yeah, so you have to. Do some market research, talk to people who live there, and adjust your business strategy and business approach based on that.
I'd like to thank you. I'd like to ask Matthew the question regarding risk. What concerns do Middle East developer have about overseas sourcing?
I think whether you're talking about Middle East or any other countries where you're importing materials from overseas, that trust that you were talking about before and that reliability is the key. And if I can use a negative example, the opposite of what I'm talking about, we've had situations on projects or in certain markets where a supplier or a contractor will come from overseas, state that they are there for the long term, that they want to establish a permanent presence in the market. They do a few projects, and they mess them up, and then they disappear. And therefore, the developers or the ones who bought the project are left to deal with the mess. How do you enforce warranty when there's nobody to call on to ask, hey, I've got this problem with my facade, how am I going to get it fixed? And I don't really have an answer as to how you can do this reliably, but establishing that trust and the ability to have someone there all the time, permanently, that you can talk to, you can rely on to come and, fix problems if they are, or to demonstrate commitment to the market. I think this is really the greatest asset you can have. It's really about that, about having that commitment to the region. It's not just I come, I do a project, and then I go, right? It's that commitment to the region.
You can't just show up, make the money, and take the money and go.
And abscond, yes.
I'd like to ask Dizette the question of partnership. Again, I'm hoping to frame this between China and Middle East, because much of the audience here potentially producing product here and trying to go to Middle East. Regarding partnership, is local partnership essential?
In the context of the Middle East, so partnering with with a main contractor, you mean?
Yes.
So yeah, okay. I would say build the trust, not necessarily the partnership. The main contractors are very diverse, obviously, in those regions. One of the bigger opportunities for partnership that we see, Silas, is in kind of bundling of these integrated solutions. So Matthew was talking about earlier all of the different kind of interconnectivity that facades are likely to have, this Internet of Things, the ability to kind of harvest, energy from solar, from wind, from rain. These are opportunities that I think China has the ability to flex to in a way that no other economy does. They are producing products and innovation products and bundled ideas faster. They've got more R&D now than the US had at its kind of in its pocket, at the last time of a major crisis. So I I see that potential for China to come with those elements of facade to create modularity, to do modularity better than they've done before, which is very high. That is honestly one of the biggest weapons in their arsenal that we can see. And those particular classes of innovation, they are what I have to say the investment crowd is looking for. That is, all of that green tech funding is being poured into things like BIPV. Obviously, China has one of the fastest growing solar energy landscapes globally, has for a long time now, but that is outpacing nearly all other economies. If they can find ways to wrap in the life cycle understanding, so deep dive into what happens during construction, what happens during operations, and what happens end of life to those integrated solutions, they will win the game.
Do you want to add something, Agnes? Go ahead.
Can I add something to it? Yeah. Partnership is important many times because it's actually even demanded by authorities. So for building materials, without local registration and approvals from local civil defense, you will not be able to put your products on the buildings. I'm getting emails, phone calls from Chinese suppliers sometimes, but unfortunately it's not even worth to consider until the civil defense approvals are in place. And for that you do need local partner or local registration. Also, one important aspect of trust is the language. People cannot trust you if you only understand every third word, and you need to rely on a translator who doesn't have technical vocabulary, but just a general interpreter. So, more important that to have the partnership is to have someone within your organization who's technically prepared to have these conversations in English or the local language.
Thank you. I'd like to move quickly to, I don't know, hopefully this question's something that you could answer related to strategy that maybe some of the manufacturers here are going into places like Middle East. Should they be competing on cost or reposition around performance?
I think my answer might be predictable in that you have to do both, right? Without having both the competitive edge on the cost side of things, I think that's kind of a first element to make a situation unworkable. Once the price has been paid, I mean, we all have to pay a price going into a particular market, whether it's products or services, and that even though maybe the costs are difficult in the beginning, that you put forth the best amount of effort to make the quality as high as possible, and then the quality can stand for itself to justify the cost at a later date. So there's a little bit of sacrifice. I think anybody that's in business understands this concept.
Okay. Sorry, I need to move quickly to my fourth section about future direction. I'd like to begin with you, Lizette. Sustainability demands coming more from regulation or from clients, from your experience?
Sustainability demands coming more from regulation or finance. I would say the finance sector is moving faster than regulation. Regulation, we talk about codes and standards and practices that we use in the day-to-day. The engineering kind of mindset is more advanced than the finance landscape is, but the policies are being directed out of say Europe with the Green New Deals. So I'd say that there is now a tension between the policies that are being pulled down and inserted over the top, so things like photovoltaics being required to a certain percentage on projects. How do I say this? One of the issues is that engineers and people in our industry know that we're already doing some fairly incredible things, and that if those things were financed properly, the outcomes for sustainability would be more than just a tick box exercise. And a lot of the sustainable certifications are what valuations are being founded on for building development. So beyond certifications, we already know that we can do better. The regulations, I have to say, are probably lagging, so codes and standards are lagging. There are now form factors for climate change in most economies, which are pretty crude. They're kind of a 2 times factor on design loads, which is not necessarily true for material behaviour, for people that operate buildings. I'd say there's an enormous gap there that really needs to be interrogated. It's a problem. It's a big problem.
Thank you. Michael, I would like to direct the next question. Are facade becoming too complex to build or maintain?
It always seems like the goalpost gets moved, doesn't it? You figure something out and you figure out how to do it well, and things keep changing. And as buildings become kind of a signpost for a lot of clients, that you're looking for something different, something special, that it's hard to keep up for everybody else to catch up to that. And I think I go back to the idea that perhaps we're chasing the wrong thing. Buildings are meant to be for the long term, and somehow creating this idea of fashion with buildings is a very unsustainable thing to do. So maybe the world of academics and people that are involved in culture can reinstitute this idea that makes architecture unique, that it isn't fashion, it is a place and an expression of human experience and usage that should define a culture for a very long time.
Thank you. Because of time, I am going to cut short to the last 2 questions as a closing reflection to what we discussed already. I'd like to have Matthew answer this one. What simple shift in collaboration could dramatically improve global facade outcomes?
That's a tough question, but I think the BIM to manufacturing shift could be the one. You know, the collaborative aspect of designing facades and having the design and manufacturing integrated into a single process, a single fluid process. You know, bypassing a lot of the steps that we see nowadays on projects where the designers, the architects, the engineer will do a model, will do drawings, this then gets passed on, then the fabricator will start again and do shop drawings, fabrication drawings, produce the facade and all that. I think if this whole process could be shrunk into a singular step, you know, you design and it goes to fabrication directly. It's not that far off, you know. It's something that used to be a dream 20 years ago or even 5 years ago, but I think we're closer than ever to achieving that. Maybe not on all projects, you know, maybe on certain categories of facades or certain types of facades, maybe not the super bespoke or the super complex geometries, but on maybe simpler project, at least in a first time, in a first stage, that could be a reality within the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years maybe.
Thank you. I'd like to ask my final question. Hopefully this is something that doesn't put a lot of challenges for your answer. What mindset shift is needed for manufacturer to move from supplier to a trusted partner?
Okay.
I'm directing
It's a broad
toward Chinese producer or product
Okay.
manufacturer, toward going
The
to Middle
first
East.
thing that comes to my mind is transparency. Yeah? And transparency comes, I mean transparency by collaboration, okay? We are not, or no one is expecting, immediate perfect solutions. We are expecting a process to develop the project and work out the solutions together. So if there are difficulties with the design, bring it up. Let's discuss. Let us learn what is possible with your manufacturing background factory and what is not possible. It's not a problem if it's not possible. We will find ways around. Yeah, but let's have it as a collaborative, nice environment with transparency on technical aspects. I think that would bring trust, and that would bring just a very pleasant process where the architect may not have, the developer may not get at the end what they originally wanted, but they are part of the process of changing it into something more feasible together with you. And that would bring more happier results, if we are part of the process of learning why is it not possible, why is it has to be done differently, and on board together we develop the solution, we know what to expect at the end, and everyone will be happy. If it's a surprise what comes on site, no one will be happy. So I think transparency is a good word to close this panel.
Transparency such as glass.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to bring this to close. I really appreciate your comments that you guys have on this. It seems like trust, collaboration, and innovation that we touch upon are all important things that we should all continue to explore for a brighter future. Thank you, all the panelists, for taking some of these abrupt questions, but my purpose was trying to get this group to understand better about the market they are interested in pursuing. Thank you.